The Modern Realty Buyer Roadmap breaks down the home buying process into 6 parts: prepare, search, offer, finance, due diligence, and close. Today we're going to get into part 1, steps 1 through 3. We're going to dive a little deeper into the front end of this process.
Mama told me to come.
Okay, this is the letter in the first page, front cover of the buyer roadmap for our Modern Realty buyers. I want to share it with you real quick. Purchasing a home is often considered one of life's major milestones. Turning a house into a home can be one of the most exciting and gratifying experiences, yet the thought of entering into the process can be overwhelming, especially for first-time buyers. At Modern Realty, we appreciate the magnitude of your decision to purchase a home, which is why we aim to make the process as smooth and easy as possible. We have dedicated our careers to helping people just like you, and with that in mind, we created this roadmap to prepare you. By the time you move into your new home, you will feel confident that you are represented by professionals who are looking out for your best interests every step of the way. Buying a home is a commitment to your future, and we take pride in participating in such an important event. We hope that you will refer your friends and family to us and return to us yourselves as you pursue other properties in the future. Sincerely, your Modern agent. Here today to help me go through the home buying process, especially part 1, which is one of the most important parts, is a friend of mine here. He was one of the original crew of the Modern Realty team. It goes all the way back to September 2015, just a couple months after we opened. He was over there on the 7-Eleven Bayless crew back in the day when we were a small boutique little agency. He's got a bachelor's degree in history from Oakland University, where he played 4 years of college baseball. He also has a teaching certification from SVSU, 8 years as a Dow High hockey coach, and 12 years as the Dow High varsity baseball coach. He played Little League Baseball with my older brother Ryan on a team called the Jock Shop, which was an athletic shop owned by his father Cliff for many, many years. It was a staple in the community, and I remember as a child going into the Jock Shop and buying, baseball stuff and stirrups and tape back in the day when you still use that stuff. But when I moved back into town, the first call that I made was to this guy, and I called him up and asked him if he had any need for some help out there on the baseball field with his coaching with Dow, because that was something I had always wanted to do, and I had been following him from afar and very impressed and excited by his interaction with the kids and his commitment to the kids. And he was gracious enough to invite me to be his assistant coach. I was the first base coach for the Dow High baseball team for a few years. And these kids, I don't know why, but they never figured out what my real name was. They just called me Coach Ron. So that became my nickname for a while. My girlfriend at the time, Meredith, was a made-up person that lived in Canada and never really existed. But according to these kids, that was the story. But anyway, now he's a successful real estate agent, good friend, and he's here with us today. Kip Harris, welcome to the show.
What's up, boss man?
Good to see you, pal.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get right into it. We're going to talk today about the first part of the home buying process, and in the Modern Realty Buyer Roadmap, that first part is to prepare. Okay, we're going to skip a little bit ahead into step 3 of that process, which is the process of defining your buying criteria. So what we're talking about here is you've gotten to the point where you found an agent, you've secured your pre-approval, and now it's time to really focus in on what kind of house you want to buy, where you want to be, and all those things. So we're going to bring Kip in, ask him some questions on how he advises his clients in this regard. Let me start by reading just the front page here. It says, before you begin looking at potential homes to purchase, you should create a list of the most important features and amenities you would like to have. This exercise will help make the process easier and more focused. So what do you do when you're sitting down with a buyer and they're just in the early stages of this process? How do you advise them in terms of where to start as far as price, location, condition, all those things?
Well, typically the first step is to make sure that they don't leave anything off the table, because a lot of people will come in with preconceived notions that I can only afford this and, I have to look for this style of house or this location and things like that. And they tend to put handcuffs on themselves so they don't really need to. So the first thing is to really get an idea of what I call their want list. So what do you want in a house? Where do you want it to be? What kind of kitchen do you want? How many beds and baths? And make sure that they have the chance to really shoot for the moon. And then based on that information, then we can go through and search the market to find out if as many of those items in that criteria, if that exists. So
Sure.
that's the big thing, is to really not hold back and not sell yourself short as a buyer. You've already met with your lender. You already know what your pre-approval is. And if you've done it correctly, you also know once the house is closed and I'm living in it, my monthly payment. So I know that I can survive at this amount per month. It's in my budget. So now working within those parameters, there's no reason to hold back because you've done your homework in the earlier parts of this step one to make sure that you've secured your mortgage pre-approval.
Sure. And have you noticed that as buyers go through the process of looking at houses and they start to tour, that their needs and their wants kind of develop and change a little bit?
Well, the best is when you have a husband and wife that don't always see eye to eye. So you'll have a list of wants from both of them,
Sure.
and sometimes they differ. In town, out of town, ranch versus 2-story. So you get a lot. And so our job is to be able to show each of them something that they like. And
Sure.
sometimes that ranch will have features that the 2-story person really likes in the kitchen, a finished basement, maybe the right property. So when you really get into it, everybody changes a little bit. So you have that list of wants, and then what it really morphs to in this process of preparing, and actually through the home buying process and the searching part, it really morphs into what fits you. So you have that preconceived notion, here's what I want, this style, this location, these finishes and stuff. And as you really get into houses and see the differences between 10, 15 different houses, the pictures you see online, it really can adjust what your priorities become from your initial shoot for the moon list. It
Sure.
really narrows down to what's most important. So if for some people, let's say they were really set on having an office space, but yet they found this house that had everything but an office space and a great kitchen, they usually morph and kind of bleed over into that area rather than staying staunch on that I have to have this office. They can create it later on, maybe convert a space in a basement or something like that. So yeah, the initial phase really does tend to morph a little bit as the process goes on.
Sure. And then as they're looking through these houses and defining their criteria, you have to reconcile your criteria with what's available on the market too.
Yeah, I mean, especially recently, this past year in 2018, and even now in the start of 2019, the inventory is not deep. And so a lot of people, and there's also differences in buyers. So you have your buyers that need to buy and your buyers that want to buy. And so those that need to buy, they're probably going to make more concessions if they need to buy something in a short period of time. And so that list that they have of wants really morphs over to their need list. So
Sure.
that's the difference of that. But with having the short inventory, you don't have quite as many options. The finishes, you can have the same beds, bath, square footage and have some options there. But as you go down the list of wants, it tends to get harder to try to check off all those items for what's out there right now.
And you have to, you buying a house typically is a pragmatic decision. You reconcile the things that you need with the things that you want, with the things that are available, with the whole, like you said, the inventory that's available. And your agent's job is in part to help you to prioritize what's most important and to help those priorities to develop and change and be kind of come to the surface as you see houses and as you begin that process and get into it. The agent is responsible for helping you as a buyer to analyze your own criteria and develop your own criteria, because nobody ever walks in to the first day and says they want to buy XYZ and then ends up buying that. It's just
Don't you wish that would happen more often?
I love helping a buyer go through the process. Sometimes they make their decisions quickly, and sometimes it takes them a long time to develop those criteria. Everybody works at a different pace, but yeah, I think that's a fun part of that process, don't you?
Yeah, I mean the cool thing about being in real estate is that you get to meet a lot of different people.
Yeah.
People that you would never come into contact with at times. It's great to have referrals from friends and family and past clients and stuff like that. So there is a decent amount of continuity between you and the people you meet, but you also get the people that could be a sign call. Just nobody, no contact, nothing, mm-hmm. And so it's a new person that you meet. And so, we're talking about criteria and the list that they want. As their agent, as you get to know them and you see the first house or the first 5 houses and stuff, you can really get a feel for what they want,
Yeah.
what their family wants, what their needs versus their wants are. And then you can help them with the listings that come out. So the next 5 houses that hit the market tomorrow, 3 of them might interest that buyer when they look at them. But you as the agent, whether you've been in it or not, you can get a feel for the size isn't right. It doesn't have the main floor laundry. You know, some of the items they've already talked about that are going to be a deal breaker, you can still send the information to them, but you can give it with the extra information that keep in mind, if before we go see this, that this doesn't have 1, 2, and 3 of the items that you said you really like.
Yeah, and a good agent should be in tune to those criteria, and that's a big part of what a buyer's agent does is gets in tune to what it is that you as a buyer are looking for, and can help to almost to check off some houses right away when they come out. This house doesn't have a main floor master, and that's something that we said we absolutely can't live without. We'll still go look at it if you'd like to see it, but before we schedule that showing, make sure you know that, hey, this one doesn't have that one and really, really important feature. Do you still want to check it out? And if they do, then we set it up.
One of the best items that you had passed on really early in my real estate career was to really encourage buyers to do drive-bys of the homes that they're interested in.
Yeah.
So to kind of filter it down, I had one couple that didn't do the drive-by, and they really liked the house, and one of their big items that they wanted to avoid was close neighbors. So as the list comes out on a Saturday, we were going to see 3 different houses, edge of town and a couple in town. And we pull up to the second house, we pull in the driveway, and sure enough, the neighbor's house is very tight to them. As I got out of my car, the husband got out of his car and said, house is too close, we need to go. Never walked in the house. Yeah, so it's those kind of things where as you learn and go through, you try to encourage people to help you as a realtor, help them find the house they need. So
that's a good segue into location, ideal location. We have in here, it says, consider school districts, proximity to work, shopping and entertainment. As you investigate potential neighborhoods, start with your ideal location and then expand outward from there. So can you tell us a little bit about Midland, the city of Midland, the school districts, and what some considerations are as far as being on the west side of town, the east side, north side? Can you just kind of speak to that a little bit and share some of your history in town with us and give us an idea? Obviously Woodcrest is on the northwest side of town and things like that.
Yeah, Midland's a divided town, as many people know. It's always been nowadays that dividing line has really become gray because you have school of choice. Sure. So for some people, they're very staunch. They want to be in the Midland High territory. They want to be in the Dow High territory. For some people, they have less concern for that, especially people that didn't grow up here and don't have that history and background stuff. So they're more looking for the right house, and then they can choose which schools they want to go to from there. So the other parts with Midland, probably the biggest surprise for me coming into real estate today, how many people are looking for that house on the edge of town. Growing up, I always had this idea that people wanted the white picket fence 3 blocks down from the elementary school they could walk to, and that exists still. But there's still this large growing population of people that want an acre of land on the edge of town. They want to be out away from things, and they don't need the mall and the restaurants and stuff right next door. They want access to it, close proximity, but out away from everybody else. So things have, my vision of what I would expect has always kind of shifted for different parts and pieces of this process. But when you are looking for a house as an individual, not only is it schools and restaurants and amenities like that, but it's work. If you have a 2-parent working household, and one works in north of Flint and the other one works, in Clare, you gotta decide where you want to be. And if this is your middle point, that's great. But then does the 10-minute drive from one side of town to the other, does that bother one of them? Do you want to be centrally located? Do you want to be closer to work? So there's a lot of parts and pieces when you talk about location that you start with. But again, like we talked about before, your needs and wants, you may find that house on the east side of town that you never would have thought of, and it was the perfect fit for you. So a lot of people can come to the point where they're happy with the decision because it's the right house.
Another criteria that people worry about or think about when they're starting the process of looking for homes is the style of the house, and the style and the size and the little bit the layout of the house. Some of those things you can search for through our multiple listing service, but with filtered criteria, number of bedrooms you can do, square footage you can do, style of house you can even do. But some things you really can't search. You can't search layout. I mean, it doesn't really, you can't search open layout versus
open concept.
Yeah. So some of this stuff you have to investigate by looking through the listing photos and actually touring properties, open houses, things like that. But What are some of the criteria that you find from your buyers that they seem to make a priority more often than not?
Location's usually big. When you're looking for that, whether it's the proximity to schools for families, that's usually one. Neighborhood, everybody doesn't want to move into a rough area, which I don't know if that exists around here in Midland, but appearance-wise, they want a nice neighborhood. So it starts with that. But I think the other things that you really need to get into houses to see is the finishes. Pictures, photographers these days are fantastic. They do a great job, and they really help people market their houses for sale. And there's a lot of times when people walk in and they're surprised because it's not quite as good as the pictures looked. I've had the flip where the pictures weren't that good, and people walked in like, wow, we're really surprised. Mm-hmm. So the hard part about shopping online exclusively is that you don't get that in-person feel for how big a space is and how nice the finishes are until you're actually there in person.
Modern advice here at the bottom of the page says, rarely does any one specific house meet every single requirement as a home buyer. As you view more and more homes, you will find that your true preferences will organically reveal themselves. So for last question for you today is, what is your favorite part about helping a buyer through that process of developing their buyer criteria? What gives you the most joy and satisfaction helping them?
Well, the end of the process is always the best. I mean, it can get tedious for the buyer themselves when they're looking and they're looking and they're looking, and there's times where they struggle to find something they want. I think the best part, and this goes back to coaching and stuff, I always call it the light bulb moment. Yeah. So when that house that you walk into, and when they open that front door and you can just see the look on their face, and you're like, yes, because you know that it's, at least from the start, it's a good fit. And once they go through it and they move towards that offer, it's a really good feeling to know that you've played a small part in this large process, the preparation, all the financing, the closing, all that stuff. That light bulb moment is really, to me, one of the best parts when they finally find something that fits them, that they like, and especially if you have two parties that might not always agree, that you get that light bulb moment and you see the nodding of yeses as opposed to the no's.
Yeah, that's exciting, isn't it? Yeah. All right, at Modern Realty, our mission is to create informed and confident buyer and seller clients. One of the ways that we do that is through the use of this buyer roadmap, which is the breakdown of how to buy a house step by step. And the other thing that we do that makes us a little bit different is we take our clients, sit down with them, and have a buyer consultation process at the front end. And part of that buyer criteria checklist that we use happens and gets filled out during this part of the process, that prepare phase, that first part. So I would suggest anybody thinking about buying a house, give Kip a call. He will sit down with you, and with his background in teaching and coaching, he really understands how to convey this information thoughtfully and carefully, and so that you really understand what you're getting into, what to expect. He will help you to define your buying criteria. He understands that that's a process that takes time, and he's very patient and understanding. Really, really good resource to be working with. If you're thinking about buying a house, give Kip a call or a text or an email, and he will be there for you. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, boss man.
Good to see you.
You too.
Mama told me to